Hi. Quick reminder. The opinions and views expressed by my guests in this episode don't necessarily reflect mine or those of the show. Not every episode, but some episodes this season, we talk about very deep, serious subjects. So if at any point you need to take a pause from listening or watching, please do so. Your mental well-being is far more important to me than any listener metrics. And the show will always be here when you're ready to come back. All right? Let's go. Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Martina Hodges-Schell, founder and MD at North Shore Studio Limited, for a relaxed, two-way conversation about her journey, the lessons she's learned, and what it takes to lead with creativity and honesty. Martina, hi, welcome to the show.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise. To start us off, as with every episode so far through all the seasons, if we were meeting in person today, where would you suggest we meet and what would you order to drink?
I would take you to my favourite coffee shop nearby. It's called Southpaw, and I would have an iced latte. But I would also love your recommendation for your favourite coffee shop brand, because I'm always looking for new coffee places to try out.
Oh, okay. Let me have a think about that and come back to you, because there are many all over the place. But for now, I will raise a metaphorical glass, or a mug rather, of iced latte to cheer you on for the rest of this recording. And for people listening or watching to kind of get to know you a little bit better, is there something near your desk or that you could talk to that gives people a little bit more info about who you are as a person?
Yes, actually, I have a lot of pictures of people behind me and animals as well. I have an object, it's a horseshoe with me here as a reminder. I work a lot with horses as equine partners in coaching people. And really love that connection as a coach with people, with horses, taking people out into nature, um, getting away from our desks, from our sort of office environments to work together. But also love I've always been a horse person. Really love that I can combine my passion for horses with what I do in my tech day job. And with that also uh, the people around me, my community. I have lots of pictures of the people I love collaborating with. Really care about my tribe of people that are part of my creative community, part of my leadership community. Like our conversation today, I feel like it's so important to have your group of people around you to bounce ideas off, to check in with, to get inspired with.
Absolutely. I'd love to know more about the combination of the coaching with horses. Like how does that work? What's the link between those two?
So horses are brilliant mirrors of our energy, like how we show up, and they give us unfiltered feedback of how we show up in the world. If we have a conversation, uh, we might rationalize what we're doing, how we're behaving as a leader, how we're communicating, how grounded we are, how we show up with our energy around people. And horses give us really direct, unfiltered feedback on how we really show up. I find it's fascinating to see what that is like. It gives us sort of feedback on, how do we communicate? How congruent are we with what we say and what we do, and what sort of energy we share. And those, what comes up in those interactions, those are really interesting coaching conversations. Um, I find, by comparison to having regular coaching conversations, one-on-one, maybe over coffee or over Zoom, um, these really tap into really deeply into our, limiting beliefs, the kind of patterns that show up in our personal and in our work lives.
That's fascinating. And I know exactly what you mean about them being a mirror of energy, much like cats,
Mhm.
uh, where dogs in general have a kind of unfiltered love for everything.
Mhm.
Cats have that, but they also tune into, I feel, more so than many dogs, although some dogs do it, but cats tune into the vibe of someone, the energy that somebody has. And I have limited experience with horses, but those that I have, I feel that I know exactly where you're coming from with that. uh, So in practice, then, how does it work? Is the person you're coaching in a sort of physical space with the horse?
Mhm. Yes, exactly that. So it's not horse riding, so it's all on the ground. But my coaching client is in a space, in a safe space with a horse, and they will have an interaction. And we will, off the back of that, have a coaching conversation about what's coming up with it. Like what topic are they exploring? What's coming up for them in that interaction? How's that showing up elsewhere in their life? And taking that conversation from there. So it's also really interesting. Mm. Just to add perhaps one more dimension, I think it's also a safe space to try out something different in terms of how you show up. Perhaps you have one way of trying to
Mm.
express yourself. Maybe you try something different. If the horse doesn't respond the way you expected, what might be a different way of trying that out? What might be multiple different ways? What feels more congruent to you? What feels more authentic? What feels more you know where's the discomfort? Where might that be coming from? Really, really interesting conversations.
Mm, that's fascinating. And what do you, I mean, I can absolutely see how it helps you help your coachee to uncover things within
Mhm.
themselves. What do you think the horse gets from it?
Really good question. I absolutely love that because, yes, it's not just about the people, right? And I feel like horses as herd animals really um, are always curious about who else is around them. Can they trust you? Are you part of the herd? They're curious to meet you and try and figure out who's this other person around them. What's the energy? So I feel like horses get out of it, meeting new people as part of their, potentially part of the herd, um, and uh, and really I keep thinking cultivating, but it's just their innate nature of continually reading the energy around them and trying to figure out, can I trust you? Are you part of the group? Who's the leader in this space? Am I leading you or are you leading me? Um, and they will only trust you to be the leader if you're very grounded, congruent, and show up, in the way what you say and what you do is all aligned and well grounded. To me, great qualities of a leader, of a modern leader, and I think great way to explore those themes. But yeah, what the horse gets out of it, curiosity and playing with new people, and yeah, but wellness of the horse absolutely critical here. We're not doing this work at the expense of the horse involved.
Mm, mm. I love that you are open to that question and that you know what the horse gets from it. I think we are so quick to think of a dog or a cat or a horse or a snake or whatever as something other than us. And at the end of the day, we're all living beings. We all see and think and feel to whatever degree that may be for whatever species, but we're all here experiencing life. And everything everything is transactional with a small t, right? That's
Mhm.
not a commercial thing. That it's a spiritual exchange of energy, whether it be cuddling up with the dog on the sofa or being in a space with a horse to figure out what vibe is going on between the two. So I love that. I love that you're looking out for them as well. Um, let's. I mean, I could probably stay with this the entire episode because I'm absolutely
Me too.
fascinated about that, and I think it's a wonderful a wonderful animals are, like you say, a wonderful mirror of what they see in us, what they feel from us, way
Mhm.
more so, I think, humans are. We'll find a way, especially British people, will find a way of being terribly polite about saying, "I really don't get a good feeling from you." Do you know what I mean? We'll find
Yeah,
we'll find a
yeah.
very floral way of saying that. Um, So I would love to kind of explore this more. So once a client has had this experience with the horse, how does that sort of manifest in what they take back into their lives as a design leader?
Yeah, and to your point, not necessarily only as a design leader, but as a leader, or even just for your personal growth as well. Uh, could be, hey, I've been working on this limiting factor, or maybe it's a limiting belief, something that might be holding me back, something that I might want to shift, something that I will have learned something about myself in this exploration. So taking back a new perspective, even a new somatic feeling. We're going from, even in our coaching conversations, but also our day-to-day work, right? We're living in our head. Um, this is also going back and reconnecting with your body, which I feel for us, especially working in the digital space, is in fast-paced, high-demand environments, is something that sort of over the years sort of disappears quite a bit, unless we have an explicit sort of practice that gets us back into our body. So I feel like a great way to have a somatic experience, have explored a question that we might want to shift, or a question that we might want to explore. What do I want to get towards? Trying to figure out what's my future path, where, what gives me the most joy, how does the future look for me, what's my career path, or my path in life, what do I want to, um, what's my goal. That could also be something that you're taking back into your practice. It might be as simple as, taking the break from the screen and the office to just stepping back and, making the space for exploring, what do I need right now? Uh, is it some sort of self-care? Is it some sort of, what do I need to get grounded again? I think that gives us, in terms of having space and capacity for creativity, but also having space and capacity to show up as a great leader, in service of our team of people. Really important questions. So depending on what question you're coming with, you'll be taking something else back, but it's usually quite a profound insight into something that's been blocking you, something that you want to strive towards, or getting back into balance with yourself.
Mm. It's absolutely fascinating. You know, I don't want to sort of belabor the point,
Mm,
but I'm very hot on animal rights, and obviously I want
mm,
animals to be treated just you would want to be treated. Um,
absolutely.
but I do love that spiritual, that energetic link that we
Mm,
have between us and animals, and I
mm,
do think they can teach us a hell of a lot because it's a non-verbal form of communication between the two. So the the subtleties of body language, for example, that
mm,
we often as humans talking to another human don't pick up on fully.
yeah.
We might sort of on some subconscious level pick up on it, but even then, maybe not all of it. Whereas when you can't communicate using what is your main form of communication, if that's verbal or written or what have you, when you can't do that, you then have to really work with your other senses to pick up
Mm,
on a much more primal sense or primal level. And I can see that absolutely happen. It's fascinating, like absolutely fascinating. Um,
mm.
go on.
No, I'm very excited about the topic. So I just wanted to absolutely agree. I think yeah, it's super fascinating. I could also talk about it for the whole hour. Um, but to your point, I just wanted to make a nod to your sort of animal rights question. I've trained for years, and the focus is animal welfare first, human,
Mm,
interaction, and getting something out of this sort of presence and this quite magical experience always comes second. So I just wanted to make that clear, considering it's something so introducing a new concept. Not that you think is like, oh gosh, this is like some kind of exploitation of the animal. Far from it.
No, no. Yeah, no, it doesn't feel that at all, but I do appreciate you confirming that. But it doesn't feel that way. And like I say, I think there's many, many studies, for example, to show that if you bring dogs into an office working
Mhm,
space, people's stress level lowers, the productivity rises, their general feeling of happiness rises.
mhm,
And this is not just because, oh, it's a cute puppy I can play with. There is something about our connection with these animals, and therefore that has to be two-way. Their connection with us that just lifts everything. And
mhm.
so, I can completely see how on that level this works, and I am very, very fascinated by it. So fascinated that I now want to take a 90-degree detour
Of
away from
course.
it. And I would love to know if you take us right back to the beginning of your career in design, and
Mhm,
give us a kind of bullet point history of how you got from there to where you are now. You don't need to touch on everything, but just the kind of key milestones, from beginning to today.
absolutely. And covering 30 years in a couple of bullet points sounds like a tricky question, but I'll give it a shot. So I
Yeah.
started out in the mid 90s. Um, I actually studied design, and it was just at the cusp of where digital, like the web became a thing, and you couldn't really quite study that. Any kind of UX wasn't the thing yet. So you can study anything specific for sort of digital design. But so I have a design education. My first role after that, I was actually in Germany. I'm originally from Germany. I studied here. I was super curious about doing that in the UK. Different approach to creative education and creativity in general. I think it's more free thinking, freewheeling. Um, and yeah, first role, I went back to Germany and I was looking at, okay, I want to work in digital. I'm really curious about this emerging web space and making that more human friendly and approachable. But I wanted to showcase that, okay, if the benchmark here today for designer is really advertising. So I went to the top ad agency in Germany to as my first role, just to demonstrate, yes, I can do what you expect of me. It's really interesting to work with some major brands and understand how advertising storytelling works. And very different at the time, very different budgets for advertising versus actual product development, product design. From there, I went on to working for small emerging digital agencies to really figure out, what is interaction design, digital product design, service design, what does that look like? And I really enjoyed that space. Went from there to a couple of major coms. I worked for Amazon. In the early days, I worked for Yahoo when mobile became, moving things from desktop onto your mobile, your connected life. What does that look like? Really fascinating inflection time. It was just as we're getting ready for the first iPhone and smartphones to emerge. So interesting design question. How do we untether being online? Then from there worked at along the way a couple of scale ups as well, and in e-commerce. From there, worked at one of the pioneering UX consultancies, Flow, here in London. Um, for American listeners, Adaptive Path would have been a sort of corresponding US agency. So one of the early pioneers in figuring out, okay, UX, how do we help people with digital experiences and make that the core question. Um, from there, let me have a quick think. Um, uh, yeah, helping different digital agencies set up their UX department and run that was interesting after a decade going back into an agency environment and looking at bringing this new sort of digital work, digital experience into that. From there, being the first hire at a startup. Uh, one of my colleagues from Yahoo days set up a travel startup. It was super interesting. I loved the space from 0 to 1, and helping him bring this idea to life. From there, I went to Method Design Agency. Really interesting. Helped introduce user research, and it was a time of lean UX, lean product development becoming a thing. So helping shape what does that look like in an agency context, and helping startups again go from 0 to 1 and shape what that offering looks like. And from there, moved to Pivotal Labs, where for 6 years I initially helped set up the London office, and their design practice, helped shape what does modern product design look like in a deeply collaborative environment, and help other organizations learn how to do that. So companies would come to us and work alongside us to really understand not just how to design new products and services, but also how to do that in a cross-functional modern software kind of way.
Um, I was pausing because I was taking it in, and also the dog is going berserk at someone walking past outside. I don't know if you can hear that.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of everything that you've just taken us through, is there a point in time where you would go back to yourself then, but knowing what you know now? And what would you say to yourself?
Oh, I love the question. I'm really curious. I'm thinking, considering that I've been helping a lot of organizations adopt, essentially design and cross-functional collaboration in aid of innovation. Like in the earlier days, I think you have experiences where you feel like you're running against a wall. The organization around you doesn't really necessarily want to um, um, come together to create that. You notice different kind of sticking points where either for yourself as a designer or for your team as a practice, you feel like, oh, there's something stopping us from actually really doing uh, really getting the outcome that we know we could be achieving. So if I'm thinking about what I know now to going back, it's like, yes, you know you need to zoom out a level to look at the organization holistically and consider what the, you know, as a systems thinking approach, how can you influence the whole operating model to set your people up for success? Therefore, also to set your customers up for, we can deliver optimal value to them, and also for the organization. So when I've had those niggling moments where I was like, oh, I really, there's a boulder and I don't know how to push on it. I'd like my for myself to know that yes, that isn't your shortcoming. There is a wider system at play that you weren't able to influence at the time, or maybe didn't even know what to look for or what to see. And now it's a lot easier to know what to address, who to include. So it's not just a design question. It's not just a product development team remit, but really organization at large.
The boulder analogy seems perfect because at the time you're there with both hands, but the boulder is so large you can't see round the edges of it to see what force is pushing back against you. And it's only with time and experience that you can look back at that situation and go, okay, it wasn't that I wasn't able to push it up. I was doing everything perfectly well and I was fully capable. It's just I couldn't see what forces were working against me at the
Mm,
time. So I think that analogy is brilliant. And it it's a really I think it's a really powerful analogy from a visual storytelling point of view. And I think a lot of people listening or watching this are going to feel very much like they're in that situation right now, that they're pushing something that they don't fully know up a hill. So I think you sharing that is going to be really helpful for them, that just keep going.
Mm,
Eventually, that boulder, you're going to get that boulder to where you need to get it to, but you're doing everything you can right now. And later on in life, you're going to look back at this and you're going to realize there were more forces working against you than you can currently see. And that's
mm,
why it's not working. It's nothing to do with you or your
mm.
skills or your ability. There's something else there that hasn't quite clicked into place, or the fog hasn't cleared quite yet. So I love that. It's really powerful, and I really appreciate you sharing. But it makes me think, is there is there someone that taught you something that you still carry with you today, but they probably don't know that you taught them that?
Oh, so many people, so many things. Hmm, what to pick out of all of that? Mm. Actually, if we're thinking about the boulder, and perhaps that with that comes, an environment, a context of might be very stressful, especially uh, as a leader in a high pressure, high paced environment. I remember one of my colleagues, and now dear friend, sat down with me just to triage all the things that were in my head. I was like, how on earth can I get in front of all of these things that need to be addressed, or expectations from the organization, from the team, from all the clients, from just also of myself, what I want to, how I want to show up as a leader, how I want to develop my practice, how I want to support everyone around me. Just triaging that. It was literally a Trello board with lots of different headlines of, uh, essentially what's the most critical, what do you actually have an influence on, what can you delegate, and a few other headings like that. But in that moment of really sort of feeling like you're drowning in all the things and not really making any sort of progress, just having that moment to reflect on it and try and figure out, okay, what should I focus on here, when overwhelm sort of starts taking over in the moment. So yeah, that's one of those things where I feel like, gosh, advice for life, really, really helpful in that moment of really sort of heading for burnout, but also for just life in general. I think absolutely critical to be able to do that and take a step back. When you're feeling uh, there's a lot of pressure and just trying to figure out, okay, what's really the most important thing here, and where can I spend where can I spend my focus? Because you can't do everything, even if you want to, even if you have that expectation of yourself that you should be able to meet all those expectations.
Mm. There's a theme emerging, I think, here of,
Mm,
we that idea of taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, but
mm,
also earlier on you mentioned about just slowing everything down
mhm,
and taking that time to think about things. And then even earlier than that, when you're talking about the work with the horses, that sort of deeper, slower pace of looking at things and taking things in. So is that a thread that's very important to you, that skill of practicing to say, hang on a second, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna pause and take this all in and figure out and then move forward.
mm. Uh, yes, interestingly enough, I've always worked in fast-paced environments. I really enjoy I enjoy fast pace. I enjoy the thrill of solving problems and figuring stuff out, getting things done. But I've also noticed there comes at some point, and I've noticed this with leaders, coaches, peers, people, my leaders in my team around me. Like there comes a sort of point where kind of essentially a breaking point sooner or later if you can't figure out a practice for yourself, um, to counterbalance that, because work tends to have a pull of it's always faster, it always wants more, it's always accelerating. I've rarely seen a work environment that decided to, oh no, we'll ask less, or we'll make more room for you to take a breath, have that room for taking a strategic perspective and taking a step back and looking at the big picture. I feel like we're all much more in day-to-day firefighting mode. I feel like strategic picture and room for creative thinking and creative ideas and developing those is necessary. So that space is necessary, but our work environment doesn't usually afford us that. So it feels like a luxury. It almost feels like um, you know, you're not supposed to do that. You can't do that. You're waiting approval for being able to slow down. But I think that practice for yourself, being able to develop that and trying to figure out how do you fit that in, so you show up as a better leader, as a better creative, um, absolutely crucial.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about, going back to a part of your career and with the knowledge that you have now, and what would you say to
Mm.
yourself then? I'd love to know if there's something that you've only recently unlearned.
Mm. I think I'm still in the process of unlearning it, although I can put it in practice at work, not so much in my personal life. It's that striving for perfection. It's that wanting to win at things and be the best at things. I feel like I'm also surrounded by a lot of people who are all saying, "Yeah, I'm a recovering perfectionist." It seems a theme in our sort of space, right? Definitely here, and I still
Mm.
grapple with that. Intellectually, logically, that makes perfect sense. I've worked in a lot of lean, agile environments. Throw your ideas out for feedback early. Shitty first draft, all that good stuff. But for myself, I still find that incredibly hard. I'm just thinking, have I unlearned that properly recently? Still on a journey, but definitely working hard on that. Mm.
I think that is an absolute recurring theme. I'm going to go out on a limb, but I think it's a pretty safe limb and say everybody that I've spoken
Mm.
with across all of these episodes, now 3 seasons worth of episodes, and conversations outside of awaiting approval. I think we, I think we have all, everybody knows. Caveat for a guest, the only caveat for a guest to be on the show is that you have achieved at least creative director or equivalent level
Mm.
in your discipline or above.
Mm.
And I think there is something about getting to that point that comes from doing good work and being
Mm.
good at your job, all of the aspects of your job, the craft, the output, but also the leadership
Yeah.
aspects that you learn along the way. But I think there is a recurring theme of all of us being recovering perfectionists. And I think there's something about the creative industries, especially. I think it happens across all industries, but I think the creative industries, especially because what we do is such an emotive job.
Mm.
We put heart and soul into
Mm.
what we're creating. It doesn't matter what the output is, whether it's UX copy on buttons to, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to belittle UX
Yeah.
copy on buttons at
No,
all,
no.
incredibly important piece of work, but I'm just saying
Mm.
whether it's the output is this or whether it's a huge vista that goes behind a set to create a skyline for a film, like there is heart and soul and spirit that goes into that work. And I think when you're good at what you do and when you love what you do, you're so invested in it and you put so much of yourself into it that you can't help but want to just tweak this bit and just fix that bit and just change the color of this and just shift this 2 pixels. It's you can't help but do that because you're
Mm.
passionate about it. And I
Mm.
think there is a fine line between doing a great job and making it look world class and getting something highly polished to being tipping over into perfectionism.
Mm.
Um, So I would love to know, as part of, if you want to share, I'd love to know as
Mm.
part of that process of a recovering perfectionist, like what signals do you listen out for to know, oh, I'm veering into that territory again and I need to pull myself back?
Yeah, for me, it's very much you know, in the, is it in the 80%? Is it already great? But I'm still tinkering, as you were just describing, and you know, it's getting slower in terms of adding more value, but I feel like, oh, but just that little bit extra or just a little bit more. And here we're actually talking about design craft itself, right? Um, Similarly, uh, as a people leader, I think there it's that translates into, you don't need to um, you need to figure out the boundary between, being there for your team and supporting your team and your practice, and not burning out in the process yourself. That to me is um, the signals of that. Am I taking enough? Uh, to have enough boundaries for myself. Self care is such a overused phrase, but am I just giving? Beyond anything that's sustainable and reasonable. Just noticing those kind of flags for myself in terms of, am I well enough rested? Am I well enough grounded? Am I losing that because I'm spending too much time on that? Yeah, and the craft, it's the tinkering, and am I still adding considerable extra value, or was it, you know, good enough sounds like, for a perfectionist, sounds like a very mediocre sort of line in the sand. But is it already great? Is what I'm doing actually adding anything, or can we get some external feedback on that, rather than me in my head noodling about, oh, but couldn't it just be just that little bit more?
I, I think that's a perfect encapsulation of how a perfectionist feels. Good enough is mediocre. Whereas
Mm,
I think, and like listeners and viewers, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think people who don't fall under that trap of perfectionism, and I think everybody does every now and again, but I mean those of us
mm,
who are constantly striving to get something pixel perfect. Um, I wonder if actually the perception of good enough is exactly that. It's
mm,
not like we think of it as mediocre, as not
mm,
reaching the bar that we set for ourselves, but actually for most people, good enough is exactly what it says on the tin. Good enough.
mm,
I wonder if this is a difference of perception, probably brought about by all sorts of factors, that would be fascinating to delve into as part of a kind of psychological research study, especially with creative leaders, like to find what, if there were repeat patterns of drivers for us that take us down these territories of sort of obsessive perfectionism at
mm,
one end of the scale. Um, and I love the idea of, it comes back again to what you were saying earlier about taking time to kind of pause and step back. And
mm,
like you say, like, am I adding value that is commensurate to the amount of effort I'm putting
mm.
in on this final
Yeah.
last little tweak? I'm a big, which sort of brings me to another question that I would love to ask. I have struggled for the last couple of years with whether or not releasing an MVP of a product or a digital experience or a website or whatever it may be is actually worth it. I
Mm,
understand the market forces behind getting to market quick enough or beating your competitors, or what, I understand all of that. But in the long term, does an MVP actually do more damage or more good? And I'd love to know your thought on that. And I set that as
yeah.
a question that probably has no right or wrong answer.
Uh, Agreed. I was going to start with, it depends. um, but context is everything here, I think. But um, having worked for a long time in that space of, a, innovation, but b, also, um, you know early quick iteration to to shape things with external feedback. I do believe in getting it into the hands of your, intended audience, your users, faster is usually a good thing. I'm sure, there's plenty of edge cases where that doesn't make so much sense, but if it's safe to learn in the open, this is great. I think two things here. One is you can build that minimum, perhaps we call it minimum lovable or minimum, viable sounds like such a curious thing, but does it deliver a slice of value of what I'm trying to achieve as a person? If we're talking about, digital service design, product design, then, that would make sense. And you can build up more, a broader set of capabilities and more visual, like more visual identity over time, um, with firsthand feedback of the people who are actually getting something done with that service. I feel the question is also, at what point might you actually shout about that you have a new thing and you might put a lot of marketing effort behind it? That might be much later, at another point when when you feel like you have a certain sort of breadth of product or service that is, can I just say, worth shouting about. That might not be your very first slice of it, but I've learned that it's really valuable in getting stuff out there and getting real feedback rather than any other proxy for that feedback.
Mm. I would love to know, we talk about MVPs and we talk about MLPs,
Mm,
and I would love to know, I think for a lot of places, they put out something that they say is an MLP, but
mm,
it's actually just an MVP with a
mm,
different label stuck on it.
yeah.
So I would love to know for you, what makes the difference between those two? What makes it lovable? What's the extra? Because we're coming back again to that perfectionism idea of just,
Yeah.
to me, the difference between an MVP and an MLP is only percentage points, but it's there. So I'd love to know what your take on that is.
Absolutely. So for me, and to your point, right, all very overused labels. A lot of people have different interpretations of what that is. Let me just throw one more thing out there before I answer. AI is perhaps changing this whole sort of landscape again because it feels very easy to just build a shiny thing very, very quickly. To me, it's also a question of the purpose of it. What's our learning goal with what we're putting out there? Now, back to that, the difference between, for me, minimum viable is you can you can achieve a goal. Perhaps that wasn't necessarily, if we're as designers looking at it from a brand perspective, or from an emotional connection perspective, we might not have layered a lot of that in yet, but we might have got the bare bones of being able to do that functional thing that we need, that we want to do. Um, Trying to not say job to be done, but you know, once we have an emotional connection to it, we might have had more time to add that additional design effort to create something that is um, more engaging, more surprising, elicits an emotional response, not just okay, I did that thing, great, it didn't get in the way, but I got that thing done that I needed to do. Um, to me, that's where, that's where you're moving the needle towards lovable, where, how is this more indispensable to how you're doing that today, or um, how you're solving that question today, or how you're not able to do that today at all. Um, you can do that in a functional or perfunctory way, or you can do that in a way that's really delightful. And there's a big difference for me, and it takes more effort. And I would like to layer that effort in once I know that, yeah, okay, we can make that thing work. Now I would like to spend that time to make it work really well, and get to that. Don't want to say polished because I don't want design to be seen as, adding a visual, like make a pretty veneer, but really, to me, that's adding craft to it, adding really deep design craft to it.
Mm, I like that definition. Thank you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh my goodness. Hmm, I should have prepped for that. Um, I was when I was thinking about my career. I remember my first job. My art director helped me work well under pressure. He literally those were the days when we still shipped physical things to clients. He'd literally already booked the courier at the beginning of the day, and I hadn't, I still had to get all this work done and presentable to the client. But I was just saying, yeah, that's the most valuable thing he learned early in his career, is like being able to stay cool under a ton of pressure, and being confident that they're able to deliver. I think that seems very sort of, I don't know, small and very trite. I'm sure it's not the most important thing I've ever learned, but yeah, it helped me very early on to learn that yes, I can deal with deadlines, questions, big questions, things that I don't necessarily think in the moment I can get done or can solve. Uh, I I can be confident and trust myself that that can happen, even if I don't quite know how yet.
Mm.
So it seems very random. Well, not random, but it seems very small. But I feel overall, uh, thinking about that sort of uncertainty is actually, I feel like the most important thing I've learned as a designer is that uncertainty is my material, and my approach to thinking, problem solving. Even if I can't tell you how I'm going to, I can't be predictable about how I'm going to get the to the answer, what the answer will look like. I know for certain that I will find an answer, um, which I find is in sharp contrast to, in most, organizations, most businesses really struggle with the idea of uncertainty. And
Mm.
it's, um, it's a really uncomfortable thing. They're forever trying to squeeze that out of the process and trying, how does that fit into a spreadsheet and how can I be predictable about the numbers? But I feel like going from 0 to 1, from that blank page to having a solution that hits the outcomes that we're expecting or delivers beyond that, I think that's the real magic of what we learn as designers.
Mm. I love that line. It's difficult to map uncertainty to KPIs or put it
Mhm,
on a slide. That's
mhm,
so true. And yet uncertainty and complexity are where we find the answers to everything,
mhm,
right? We don't ever look at a single plane of information and know all the answers. We have to go right into that single plane and sort of explode all the layers of that and find all the nuances, all the differences, all the little tiny imperfections and bumps
mhm.
and paths and ropes and threads and that's where we find the answer in that complexity. And
Mhm.
so when you start to look at complexity, it's a plate of spaghetti, right? There's uncertainty in there. I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't know where. I can see this piece of spaghetti starts here. I've got no idea where it ends. Like, I don't know. I have no idea which other pieces of spaghetti
Mhm.
it's wrapped around. I don't know if there's going to be a chunk of tomato attached to it, or do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
and maybe it's because I'm hungry that I'm coming up with that, with that analogy. But I think you're absolutely spot on. It's the the uncertainty is crucial to what we do.
Mm.
Um, and it's in every aspect of what we do. It's not just about the
Yes.
work that we create, it's about the teams that we lead. Each
Mhm.
person that we're there to sort of shepherd through everything, it has uncertainty and complexity and to the degree that is relevant for us to do so as leaders and with the boundaries that have set in place to keep us and them safe, it's a part of our job to help find clarity in that uncertainty to the degree that we're able to. So That makes perfect sense. And it kind of moves nicely into my next question. I would love to know what you hope people who've worked with you say about you when you're not in the room. And the reason I ask that is because I've realized that we so often, when we lose somebody, we think about all the things we wanted to say to them.
Mm,
And we, there are places where we can sort of put that grief and release that. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to have a space to do that when we're able to do that and to say those things to the people that we want to say? So I would love to know when you think back about teams you've worked with, what do
mm.
you hope that they say about you when you're not in the room?
I love that question. I was just thinking about that myself. I've just come back from a funeral last week, and it was very much that, gosh, at the end of your life, what do you expect? What would you like people to talk about? And so thank you for asking that question. I'm thinking, to me, it really matters to create the space for my team and for the individuals for themselves to grow, and also as a team to flourish and feel like they can do their best work together. So I would hope that that might show up in what they remember about working with me. Um, I would also hope that uh, perhaps just how I show up. I try very hard to show up as a kind, fair uh, person who brings people together. I hope that that's a quality or way of being as a leader that's appreciated. People like different styles. I'm very very mindful and uh, that I want to be empathic and I want to create that space for others and understand each individual well. So I hope that that is also something that uh, they notice and that actually that they receive as well and perhaps reflect back. It's like best intentions are one thing, but it would be nice if it also if it also was experienced like that.
Mm, that's a lovely answer full of warmth. Thank you. To sort of have the same question, but kind of flip it forward facing, what
Mm,
are you hoping that people listening or watching this take away from this episode?
mm. Um, I'm thinking a couple of things. Thinking back to that boulder, in your leadership journey, as you're transitioning or pivoting from, craft and being great at your craft into being a leader of people and not just the craft, trying to figure out, what are those boulders and how can I influence them? What can be my own practice for as a leader for um, uh, I'm getting stuck on that self-care again, but it's a demanding role. So looking at it's not selfish or self-indulgent to look at, what practice do you cultivate to be able to show up as a great leader for your team and your organization. Yeah, those two things, and yeah, thinking about the boulders, what kind of transformation might help remove them outside of the current purview. And yeah, um, how do you, uh, how do you stay grounded? And what do you need to nurture yourself as a leader?
Mm. We've reached that time. It's the final question. It's the same
Mhm.
final question that every guest gets asked. Martina, are you awaiting approval?
Mhm. Mhm. I think I'm not awaiting approval anymore. When I'm thinking of approval, I'm thinking more about my loved ones and how I show up as a person in life. But when it comes to work, I feel uh, bold enough to have a vision for how things could be better. Um, and not waiting for approval and not waiting for permission to strive for that.
Beautiful. I love it. Martina, this is now your opportunity to let those listening and watching know what you have going on in your life, things that you want to promote, and how they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I blog and I work at northshore.studio. And I'm working on a new book around the concept of purposeful AI. So if you have a case study, if you have a story to share, me and my co-author Shazia Holtom are looking for people to share stories. Um, Drop me an email. And yeah, if you're in that space of being passionate about collaborative teams and making sure that your design ideas get into the hands of users and don't sort of get lost in the organization, James O'Brien and I wrote a book over a decade ago now, but still with evergreen content around communicating the UX vision, how to not get stuck in anti-patterns of, collaboration and communication when it's about expressing your ideas and working with stakeholders.
Martina, this has been a really lovely, warm conversation, and I really genuinely feel that there's a hell of a lot for people to take away from this. So I really appreciate everything that you shared and spending your time with us today.
Likewise, thank you so much, Adam. I loved the questions. I loved our conversation and looking forward to more.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're feeling stuck or want to think out loud about where you're heading, remember that you don't have to figure that all out on your own. I offer a free 15-minute conversation to anyone who wants help figuring out what's in front of them. Whether that leads to us working together or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you have someone in your corner, even if it's just for those 15 minutes. Head to growwithadamjennings.com and book your call. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so that you don't miss the rest of season 3. There is some absolute gold coming your way. So until next time, keep creating, keep questioning, and above all else, keep going.